thank God for them every day.
Wow. We are very blessed that we've had
Because
such good parents.
a lot of, in fact, I don't know any families that have children that are equal to you all in education and looks and ability.
I think you're a little bit biased.
No, I wouldn't be biased.
If you want those.
Okay. Are you going to start rolling?
It is.
Okay. Go on. So.
What am I supposed to look at the camera?
Nope, you
Just
can just
look
look
at
at her.
Yeah.
This is not my good side.
Granddad, you don't have a bad side.
What?
All of your sides are your good sides.
Oh, shoot. Oh, I'm a happy person.
Yeah?
I'm a happy person because I know who made everything, and he's a personal friend of mine, and I'm going to be with him forever. A lot of people never come to that realization, and they don't really believe that there is a God, or that the Lord Jesus is his son, and that he did what he did. I'm just amazed that I think about well, can't talk. I better not talk about that. I better talk about something else.
You can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, the most important thing in life, as far as I'm concerned, is to know and understand who God Almighty is and who the Lord Jesus is. They are not a figment of the imagination. He was a man who lived, Jesus, and experienced all the vicissitudes of life that we do, but was unique in that he was without sin, and that he was willing to take upon himself at the Father's will the sin of all of us, the whole world. And I think about that often. I think that's what killed him, was not just one sin, but the sins of all the world. So no wonder there was darkness at their time for 3 hours, from noon till 3 o'clock, when he finally passed away. But the glorious question, the answer to all that is that he's coming again, and we're going to be with him and see the glory that he had with the Father before the world was. A lot of people think that's just a make-believe story. Well, you see the reality of it. You see us, and he was made like us. So the greatest satisfaction that I have in this life is to know the truth and to believe the truth. And I believe and hope that we will all be together and know each other in the next life. So this is a wonderful life now, but there's going to be a better one to come. Now, I hope I won't preach anymore, but that's a lot. That constitutes a lot of my life and happiness, and I know that all of you are his children. You accepted him and been baptized, and so I can lay down and sleep at night and think, well, we're all ready for that glorious day, whatever it's going to be.
It's a great
I
comfort.
hadn't intended to say anything about that, but that's the reason that I can be happy and satisfied whatever happens, because I know who has taken care of me, seen me through some really difficult times, and for whatever reason has let me survive. All right, okay, I'm through with it.
capture in this conversation is just a little bit of your history, your life. So I guess one of the first questions I'll ask you is, how would you define yourself? Like, who are you? How do you see yourself?
Well, of course, I have a recollection of being about probably between 2 and 3 years old. That's my first recollection of life.
That's young.
And we lived, I was born in Kentucky in Pike County. My father was an accountant in a coal mine called Henry Clay. And he eventually became the superintendent of that mine. And we lived there until I was of school age, 6 years old. And I remember I had a little dog. A doctor down in Pikeville, Kentucky sent me a little dog on the train.
Oh.
He was in a box, little cardboard box.
That's so cute.
And I took him home and put him down on the floor. And I remember pouring him a little milk. His name was Jack. He was a mongrel, tan, but he was my pal. And he stayed with me every day. When I went to school at 6 years of age, he comes in the classroom with me. Well,
they let the dog come into the classroom?
Well, he did. And my father's first cousin was the teacher of the class. Her name was Pearl Francisco. She said, "Roy, your dog can't stay here with you. You got to let him go." So I took him out. But he was there when I got out at the end of the school day.
Wow.
He took me to school, but he was there when I got out. Well, from that point on, we moved to another coal mining community named Kingston, which was in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed there until I was in the second grade. So the company that my dad worked for moved him to Birmingham, Alabama. It was about 1933. We lived in Birmingham until 42.
Is that the house that we went back and saw?
Yes, okay. So I grew up in Birmingham, went to grade school, went through the 8th grade at Birmingham to grade school. At that time, the South was segregated. The colored people rode in the back of the streetcars, and they had their own schools, they had their own hospital. So I didn't really go to school with any black children. Well, the war came on then,
and you signed up, right? You weren't drafted. You volunteered.
Yeah,
you weren't drafted.
When I was 17, I graduated from Phillips High School in Birmingham. So I didn't want to go to the Marines or the Navy or the Army. My dad was in the Marines in the First World War, and he said it was very hard.
Yeah, I bet.
He said he thought he was tough, but they about killed him. So.
Oh, man.
So anyway, I always liked airplanes, so I decided I would enlist. Well, to enlist, you had to have somebody write letters of recommendation.
It's kind of funny.
The war was on,
Yeah.
but I had to have a couple of letters of recommendation about my character. So I got those, enlisted when I was 17, and they didn't call me until I was 18, which was October of 43. So, went to the Air Force, trained as a gunner, went to Keesler Field, Mississippi, and finally to Las Vegas, where the gunnery school, and trained, and they made me a gunner for a bomber in Las Vegas. So we moved from Las Vegas to Dyersburg, Tennessee, where the crews we put together, pilots and the co-pilots and the navigator and all the gunners. They all came together, and we were made up a crew. So we trained for 3 or 4 months in the States, flying different places in the States. So then I went overseas in October of 43.
So you trained for a year?
October 44. I had my 19th birthday off the coast of Algiers on the way to Italy. And we landed in Naples, Italy, got on a cattle train, cattle cars. We went about 70 miles east to a little town called Foggia, and that was our air base. It was primitive, had a dirt runway with metal lath put down over it. And so we flew then up into Yugoslavia, we flew up into Austria, Vienna, we flew into Bavaria, we flew and helped the 8th Army, which was in northern Italy. The German army was still in northern Italy. So I flew a total of 30 missions, flew more than that, but if you didn't drop your bombs, you didn't get credit.
Huh.
So when the war was over in 45, we got to fly home. So we left Italy, flew down to Algiers, over to Marrakesh, which is on the western coast of Africa.
Is that where you all tried to take a monkey?
No, that's over Brazil.
Okay.
And from Marrakesh, we flew down to Dakar, which is in French West Africa. Then we flew over to Natal, Brazil, and from there we flew up into British Guiana, which is up on the northeast coast of South America. And the airfield was just cut out of the desert, out of the jungle. So some of the boys caught little monkeys and put them in their bag, and we flew into Puerto Rico and finally Charleston, South Carolina, and they dumped the bags out, and here all these monkeys were out running around. And they assured us we couldn't keep our monkeys.
Aww.
So I came home. I had gone to Alabama after I got out of high school, and went down there for a quarter, and then turned 18. And so when I came home, my family wanted me to stay in Ohio, and so I went to Ohio State. And 45 to 49, I graduated from Ohio State in 49. My father bought a larger hardware in 1950 in Ironton, Ohio. So he wanted me to come and work with him, and I said, well, that'll be fun. I'd like to do that. So we've lived in Ironton since 1950. In 55, we bought another hardware store down in Portsmouth, Ohio, which is 30 miles down the river. I had that for between 4.5 and 5 years. And I met a girl that I decided I wanted to marry.
How did you and Mumsy meet?
Pardon?
How did you all meet?
We were at the church.
You met at
church. And she was a piano player and an organist in the church. And so, in fact, she was a school teacher that taught music in the elementary schools. We had 6 elementary schools in Ironton, and she had 600 students.
Wow.
And so anyway, her name was Betty Bird, from Wyoming County in West Virginia. So we were married in 59. David was born in 61, and Rebecca was born in 63.
64.
So I believe
64.
64.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we just had a wonderful life together. She loved music and she taught music. After she came home in the afternoon from school, she had students that would come to the house and take piano lessons. And then after that was over, I came home at 5 o'clock and she would cook dinner and so forth. So we had, at that time in the early 60s and 70s, the social life was different. Television was just coming on, and so our social life consisted mostly of the people that we knew in church that were our ages. Jim, Dan, and Waldo, and Scotty Roberts and his wife, and so forth. So we took our children every summer for years to Myrtle Beach.
Thank you.
To Myrtle Beach for vacation, and we all love the beach. We could rent a house on the south end of Myrtle Beach, a wooden house right on the beach for $250 a week.
A week?
Yes. No air conditioning because
Oh gosh.
the houses didn't have air, but we didn't care because I grew up in the South and was used to the heat, and but we enjoyed that. Betty thought that David had to have his little baby crib that my sister had used for her children, or he wouldn't sleep good. So I had a 4-door sedan, and I had to tie that baby crib on top of my car.
Get out.
If you can believe that.
I haven't heard that before.
And drive all the way to Myrtle Beach and drive all the way back. And, you know, I think about it now and I think, you know, that was crazy. But we did. We did. That's what we did. My father was born in Kentucky. My mother was born over around in western Kentucky, a place called Dawson Springs. My father was born in Pike County, where I was born. My mother had a brother named Owen and another brother named Arnold. Arnold had 2 boys. Jerry was in the Marines and John was in the Navy. Both these boys were killed in the Pacific.
During World War II?
Yes. The other brother that Mother had was named Owen, and he was he was a railroad man, and he became an inspector, steam engine inspector for the federal government. At that time, all engines were just steam engines, and of course, they became worn and needed repair, and a lot of times they kept running them where they needed to be repaired. He'd come visit us and tell us funny stories about some of these engines that blew up.
Oh gosh.
And so we had a good time together when he came to visit us. My mother had a sister by the name of Neva who worked in Cleveland, and Uncle Owen got her a job. He knew a railroad man in Cleveland who he and his wife didn't have any children, so he said, my sister's coming to Cleveland and she would like to find a job. Could you let her live with you till she finds a job? Well, she stayed with them over 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
And because they didn't have children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other part of my family. That, of course, my dad had 4 brothers, he had 4 brothers. Alec was older than my dad. He was he had another mother than my father. His mother passed away. He was born about, I think, 1890 maybe. My dad was born in 1898. My mother was born in 1897, and my dad lived to be 90. My grandfather, Ratliff, was born in 1858, and he lived to be 90. And so my father lived to be 90. My mother was 95. She said, "Boy, I'm getting old." I said, "No, you won't be old till you're 100. So she lived to be 103. So here I am today in July of 2020, and in October I will be 95. So I'm not old
You're
yet.
not old yet.
No.
You're a young man.
I've got 5 more years
Yeah, before you're old.
before I can. Yes. I don't know. I had a regular college experience. Ohio State was an interesting place. Of course, they were great school for any profession you wanted to be. They had a college for it. When I started there in 1949, 45, there were 25,000 students there. And I was fortunate I got to go to school on the program, veterans program that paid for my education. So the only thing my family had to provide was my room and board. So that was a great blessing.
That's awesome.
Um,
Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with the war, like what boot camp was like and what living on a base was like?
While I was in the service, I was drafted. I was still in school at the University of Alabama.
Roll Tide.
And I got my notice to report. I thought, oh my goodness, where I have to go up to Cincinnati, across the river from Cincinnati was the base that I had to report to. And I thought, that's Yankee land. I'm in trouble at those Yankees.
Those Yankees.
So anyway, they sent me down to Keeslerfield, Mississippi, which is near Biloxi, Mississippi. We had, it was a permanent base, and they had wooden barracks there, but of course they were full. So we had all these new troops coming, and so we lived out in a field. They gave us a tent and put 6 men in a tent. Gave us a cot and 2 blankets, and no electricity. And of course, you had to get up and go to the PX or someplace else to get a drink. They had big wooden tables spread out, and if you wanted clean clothes, you had to take your pants and shirt off and lay them on there and pour water on them and take soap and rub on there and take a scrub brush and then hang them out to dry. And then if you wanted to press them, you put them on your cot and put your pants and your shirt down, fold them nice, and put your blanket over it, and then lay down on it. Pressed your uniform.
That's pretty funny.
So then we had a 15-mile hike out to the gunnery range on a rainy day.
Oh gosh.
So while we were there, this was in January, and we lived in pup tents, which is a 2-man tent. Well, when I got my assignment, I found out that the sergeant that was a regular Army person was going to be my tent mate, and so it's cold, so it's raining, and so we crawled in there. We had to ditch our tents. You dig a ditch around your tent to keep the water from coming in. You lay with no cots, you lay on the ground. So we put our raincoats down on the ground, and then we spread our blanket down, put half of it over that, lay down, put the other half over it, and we slept with all our clothes on, except Sergeant. He started taking all his clothes off. It's winter, it's raining. I said, Sarge, you've lost your mind. He said, wait and see. 3 minutes later, he's snoring. I took this for a couple of nights, and finally I found if I was going to get any sleep, I had to do the same thing. Well, curiously enough, if you can just take your clothes off and cover yourself up with half a blanket and your overcoat and your pants and your shirt, and air can circulate, you just sleep like a baby. Well, we go to Las Vegas, and it's hot out there. I mean, it's cool in the evening, but it's hot when the sun comes up. You get up at 5:30 in the morning, and go down to the mess hall and get something to eat. Well, you have calisthenics, and then you have some classroom work to do. You're going to be a gunner on a bomber, so you have all these pictures of the foreign planes, the German planes as well as the Japanese planes. And they flash them on the screen. And you have to tell them what that is. That's a Zero. That's a Mitsubishi. That's a Messerschmitt 109. That's and so it's a Stuka dive bomber or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there's visual work, school work, in addition to going out to the range. They had a course that they put a pickup truck, and they give you a Browning automatic shotgun, and you have two soldiers in the back of this pickup truck. So what they did with this truck, they had a roadway around a big loop, and as you went around this roadway, these clay pigeons would be thrown out. Maybe before you got to and one of them is on the outside, one of them is on the inside, and then you switch. But sometimes on this side, they would come before you got to them, or when you got even with them, or when you got past them, and you had to learn to break those clay pigeons. So, and you just rode around and around and around till the casings were up to your shoe tops.
Gosh.
But you could either learn to do it or you couldn't. Well, and after you did that, they put you in a regular turret, which is what is on an airplane. It's a mechanical turret that revolves 360 degrees. It has two 50 caliber machine guns, and it operates with two levers. Here you can push it and the guns go down. You can move it and the turret goes, so forth and so forth. So you practice and with targets. Well, then you finally graduate and you go to Dyersburg, Tennessee. They make up a crew there with a B-17 airplane, and you have a 10-man crew, and you have an engineer, that is the top turret man. You have a bombardier, navigator, pilot, co-pilot, engineer, radio operator, one turret gunner on the left, the other one on the right. You have a tail gunner in the rear, and I got the ball turret, which is the one on the bottom of the plane. Well, they take you up, and then they have planes that fly and drag a long sleeve behind them. And you use live ammunition. Today it may be green tip or brown or black or red. And so they keep you practice at these moving targets, and then when you get down and land, they count your hits.
Based on color?
Based on the color,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to get in the top 15, I believe, and they gave us a night off to go into Las Vegas to the Sands Hotel, and they gave us a steak dinner.
Wow.
And they had a comedian there, and I don't remember what his name was, but we had a show. So we flew in the area around Dyersburg. We flew at night, which I didn't like because at night it depends on the cloud cover. If it is winter and the cloud cover is heavy, you in America, of course, we had all the lights on, but you fly over areas of the country where there was not much population, and you could lose sight of the horizon. And of course, I was always afraid, we'll be up high enough. After the war, when I got home, I had a kind of curious experience. To get flight pay, which was $30 a month, I believe, you had to fly 12 hours. So, of course, the war was over, and I decided, well, I'd like to get flight pay. So we were up at Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and you could get on a plane there and fly out to Walla Walla, Washington, which was 6 hours out and 6 hours, 6 hours out and 6 hours back, and you got your flight pay. So we got on this plane, and we're just passengers back in this bomber, and they didn't come until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I didn't want to fly. I didn't like flying at night. But they said, well, you signed up, you have to go.
Uh-oh.
So, I haven't told you this, Howell.
I don't think so.
Well, we take off and we fly, and we're out there. 12 o'clock comes, and we're not there. So I call up front. What's the problem? Well, we will be there in just a little bit. Well, it wasn't but just a second or two, and there was an explosion on the plane. I thought it was on the plane. I thought, my goodness, this thing's on. The engineer's gone back into Bombay to transfer fuel. The valves are there from the outer tanks to the inner. And this thing, and he's smoking and got this thing on fire. I got to get out of this thing. So I hooked my parachute on and crawled back toward the door where you could get out, but I couldn't get up. I was pressed down against the floor, and there was a crash, and I turned around, and the boy next to me was bleeding, and I thought, what's happened? Well, what happened was these are new pilots that didn't fly combat missions, and they were just still in the Army, Air Force, and they were just giving them flight time. And so our pilot and navigator said, just watch that plane up front there. And so our navigator just laid down and went to sleep. So what happened was the plane in front of us flew into a mountain and blew up.
Are you serious?
Yeah, killed 15 people. And our pilot could see that we were below the mountain. We were half a mile behind them. So he throws on the throttle and pulls back on the stick, and so he's going up like this, and that's what was pressed down.
Before.
Well, we took the top branches off, tore 3 foot off our left wingtip.
Oh my gosh.
A branch came back against the 50 caliber stowed out the side and broke that plexiglass window, and that's where this kid next to me got cut. Well, I didn't know where to bail out or not, because I knew that Washington has lots and thousands of acres of pine trees. And I thought,
The plane is still flying at this point?
they're flying.
Oh, okay.
So now the pilot, of course, he's confused, and he doesn't know which way to go. And so it took him probably 15 or 20 minutes to get control and finally get contact with the airport.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, I finally got contact with the airport, we're going to land. So I thought, well, if I bail out, I'm liable to be hung up in a pine tree out there somewhere, and they'll never find me. So I just trusted the good Lord, and we landed
Wow.
safely.
That is unreal.
Pardon?
I can't believe I've never heard that story.
Yeah, I've never heard that either. You would say me that one.
That's
It's tough
crazy.
Yeah. So, didn't I tell you the Lord always took care of me?
He surely did. My goodness. You're one of his favorites.
Yeah. When I was flying missions out of Italy, I talked to him a lot.
Yeah?
And I promised him I'd try to be a good boy. So I haven't always, I'm sure I haven't always done what I would like to have done. But anyway, that's my experience.
Wow.
Let's take a quick.
When we got to come fly back after the war was over, we came from down to Algiers to Morocco, British, French West Africa, Natal, Brazil, British Guiana, Puerto Rico, Charleston, South Carolina. Well, they sent me down to St. Petersburg and Tampa. They're the twin cities there. MacDill Field was there. And so we didn't have anything to do. And this is after the war's over. It's probably August, September, and we just sat around. So somebody decided that we need to thin it out down there. So they put me on a train and sent me up to Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Oh my gosh.
Now, what am I doing in Sioux Falls, South Dakota? Well, now it's October, and there's been no pheasant hunting for 4 years because there was no ammunition. And so no one, the civilians didn't have ammunition, and but we could get ammunition. So what we did if you wanted to go pheasant hunting, you just get a box of ammunition and get a pass. You go downtown, stand on the street corner with your ammunition in your hand, and the residents there, the men that wanted to hunt pheasant, would come by in their car and pick you up. Back then, this is 1945, there were fenders on cars, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't have them like you had them back then, but they were real fenders. South Dakota is laid off in square miles.
Okay.
And the land, and there's a roadway every square mile. So one of us would sit on the left front fender and the other one on the right front fender, and we'd shoot pheasants this way or that way
While you're driving?
while we were driving. And then we'd get in and drive, and the guy that picked us up would get out and sit on there. We sent pheasants to everybody we knew.
That's hilarious. So you got a lot?
Yeah, we shot a lot of pheasants. We'd take them in, and so I got my discharge in November, I believe it's the 6th, and got to come home. And
Tell them the story about when you were flying over Switzerland and you had to get rid of your bombs.
I did what?
Wasn't it when you were flying over Switzerland and you couldn't, your bombs got stuck?
Well, our bomber normally held 12 500-pound bombs. There were 6 on each side.
Jeez.
There's a walkway. The radio operator's here, and he could open the door. There's a walkway through the bomb area. Now there's 6 bombs here and there's 6 bombs here, and there's another door you open up, and then that's where the engineer stood behind the pilot and co-pilot, and above him was his turret where he could shoot. And down below them then was the navigator and the bombardier. Well, we'd get up at 5 in the morning and go down, have dress, and go down and have breakfast, and go over to the building where they had the briefing. So they tell you where you were going, where you were flying, and what the target was. And so you get up at 5, go to breakfast, go to briefing, get in the truck, go down to the flight, where the planes were, and as far as we were concerned, we had to check to make sure our guns were in and everything. And so start engines was 7 o'clock, and our wing that we were in put up 72 planes, and so that's going to take a while for them to get off the ground. And we flew down the valley about 15 miles. There's a little from Foggia, 15 miles. There was a little town called Cherignola. It had a big smokestack, and we'd go down there and you turn at that smokestack. Of course, we just stood up in the back, and but that time we were probably 200 feet off the ground, and turn, and then we'd start turning north, and we'd be on a ascent for the next 500 miles over the Adriatic, and we finally hit the coast up in the Udine area, and where Italy comes around to Yugoslavia.
Mm-hmm.
So our altitude was generally around 22 to 25,000 feet. And the bombing
cold?
was
Was it cold?
cold. Yes, it was cold. Sometimes it would be 50 below. We had heated suits. We had electric. We had gloves. We had jackets and pants that were heated, and we wore the gunners wore silk gloves and their heated glove over that. If your guns jammed, and if you were firing them and they jammed, and you had to take the top off and get the whole string, get it unjammed, you couldn't touch metal with your bare hand. If it was 50 below, it'd stick to it. So we had to have silk gloves so we could do that.
Huh.
And we'd fly. It took us until almost 12 o'clock before we were in the area that we're going to bomb. Because it was a slow process to get all these planes. We flew 7 airplane formations, 3, 3, and 1 down in the slot. So you can picture 3, 3, and 1 down in the slot. So we're all behind the lead plane. It's the only one that had a bomb sight because they didn't want the Germans to get our bomb sight. So when we flew to a place called the initial point, which could be 50 to 100 miles from the target, but once you hit that point, the pilots knew what, and where they were. Once they hit that point and turned, then they put it on. The bombardier took over, and the bomb sight we had would fly that airplane. So the pilot is just sitting there, and the co-pilot's sitting there. They can't touch it. They can't do anything. In the B-17 formations, I'm sure it was the same in the B-24s. So from that point on, that heading puts you on the target. So from that point on, the bombardier then is looking in his bomb sight, and he's looking for checkpoints and trying to find exactly where that target is. And Vienna, Austria, was a bad target. So was another target over in Bavaria on the Rhine River, which they made Messerschmitt fighters. We went up there 2 or 3 times, and the flak guns were 88 millimeter and 105 millimeter. The Germans had 2 anti-aircraft guns. And the 88 was a black burst, and the 105 was a white. And of course, the 105 would go higher, but it didn't need to go higher because we had what we called chaff, which was boxes, not so big, little boxes. Tear them open, and shreds of aluminum. That's the reason there was no aluminum packages around your cigarettes during the war, because we had a little opening in back here on the right hand side, and the gunner on that side, as we started down the target, as close as we got, he would throw these strips of aluminum out, and of course that kind of helped throw the radar off. If the guns were generally in 3 and 4 batteries that fired together, and you could see, if you're on the bomb run, you could see them coming up, and if they were on your altitude, it's tough. And the next one's up would be closer. The next one, so you're wondering, am I going to get by that point where they're moving or not? And when you could hear them, when you could hear those 88s go off, you were close. Above the roar of 4 engines. Yeah. It's so anyway, you watch the lead plane. We flew number 2 most all the time. But once in a while we flew number 1, when our pilots got to go to, our officers got to go to Rome on a break after 25 missions, and we didn't go. They sent us to Isle Capri, which was in the Bay of Naples, which didn't have anything there, just a different place, but no activity much. They had some nice pavilions, houses and so forth there, but there wasn't really much. We didn't get to go to Naples and walk up and down the street. Anyway, 12 o'clock, we're going down the bomb run, and we're home by about 3.
Okay.
And so we get up at 5 in the morning. We're home about 3, and and we landed. The big trucks would pick us up and take us to our rest area. We could go down to the infirmary and get a shot of whiskey, and just one shot. Now the officers, they could buy whiskey. They could have it on the 5th, but enlisted men could only get a shot of whiskey. We were grateful for that. It helped calm you down, and we had I was 19. Henry Folks was the left waist gunner. He was from Birmingham, and so we had I can't tell you about how we got together, but we were assigned to different crews. But I had to play sick and go to the hospital to lay over, so I'd be marked off and get on Henry's crew. So I faked, and the only thing you can fake that they can't check is what?
I don't know.
A severe headache.
Okay, like a migraine?
Migraine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they can't check that. So that's what I had.
So you had.
I had a migraine headache. So they scratched me. The sergeant said if you can get off for some reason or other by going to the hospital or whatever. I said, okay, Sergeant. So I got scratched, and Henry and I were put together. So anyway, Henry's on the crew. We had a boy named O'Brien from Detroit, and we had Joe D'Amelio, who was a radio operator. He was from Hoboken, New Jersey. And the pilot was Durkin. He was from New York, and the other crew members were listed.
Were they your crew members the whole time?
Yes, we all flew together. We flew while the officers were in Rome. We flew 2 or 3 missions, and they were mad when they got back because, they knew we were going to have to split up because we were going to make 25 before they did.
25 missions?
Yeah.
That's funny.
What happened at 25?
You got to go to a week's rest. And the officers went to Rome, and we got to go down to the Isle of Capri, get on the cattle train and go over to Naples and catch a boat and go over to the Isle of Capri, which was in Roman times a pleasure place for the Caesars. And they had the Blue Grotto there, which was a cave. And when you go inside this cave, the light, there's enough light that comes in there. It's really an azure green color. You can take your oar and hit it, and the water all splashes up, and it's an azure green.
That's crazy.
It's beautiful, beautiful place. So,
What was one of the craziest experiences that you had while you were flying a mission? Like something either scary or funny that happened that you remember?
the closest I got to getting killed, I didn't realize it the first time when we got back and landed. The 88 millimeter would go off on contact. The 105 would go off at a set altitude. And obviously, 105 went through the trailing edge of our wing on the right. Here's our fuselage, here's our wing, the trailing edge, and here's this this hole this big, where this 105 millimeter goes through there. If it had gone 3 feet left, it had hit our 500-pound bombs.
Jeez.
If it had gone 3 feet closer, it would have gone through the gas tank and blow us in a million pieces.
My goodness.
So, but the other one, the most scary that I knew about, I'm going down the bomb run at Vienna, and my door came off of my turret. Now, you got to understand, the turret is 3/4 of it is down below the plane. It's only 1/4 of it up here at the top. Well, if you want to get in that turret, inside, there's a door here. It's got 2 latches. You lift it up, you step down into the turret, and you sit down, and there's a strap that you can put across your shoulders, and you pull the door down and snap the thing shut. Okay, you get your controls, and you pull them back, and the guns, you have to crank the thing down. The gun's been like this, so when you get ready to get in your turret, you have to crank up in the plane until your guns go down like that, and bring the door up into the plane. Okay, so now you get in it, and so now you're ready to go. You're sitting up like this, but your guns are straight down. So you put your strap on, close your door down, take your 2 hydraulic controls, pull back on them, and your guns come up and you go down. Now, when you're underneath there, you're laying on your back and you're looking out your porthole. You can move your right or left and do a 360, or you can go all the way down. So your responsibility is to take care of everything beneath that airplane. Any fighters that come up, and you see planes go down or whatever, you try to see if there's counter shoots or whatever. Well, we're going down the bomb run, and I'm doing something, and all of a sudden, my door's gone. I've got nothing from here to here.
Oh my gosh.
Except that strap.
Yeah.
I don't have a parachute. I'm too big for the turret. And my parachute's up in the plane. And of course, if we had ever been hit and there'd been any violence at all, my chute would have just been who knows where. So I called the pilot. I said, Dirk, my door blew off. Well, you have to stay in your turret, but you can come up into the plane. I mean, you can't stand 30 or 40 or 50 below with all that air, and so you have to get out of that. So I ran my turret down and I came up in the plane, and I'm just sitting there the rest of the time until I get back home.
That must have been scary.
I would have been 6'3" if I hadn't, but I quit growing that minute.
Yeah, you decided you didn't want to get any bigger for that turret.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Oh. What about the time that you?
Well, on one occasion, we dropped our bombs and we started home, and so Joe DePine, our radio operator, opened the door, looked in the bomb bay, and we got a bomb that's hung up, frozen. They got a rack. It's about that long. It's got hooks on it that hooks onto each bomb. And when the bombardier it's electric, and when the bombardier pushes a button, he's all unsnapping, all the bombs drop. Well, he'd done that, but they didn't open. So Joe goes back, or Rick Lacey, the engineer, comes back, and they kick it and try to get it out, and it won't come. So this is a new plane, first trip. The crew chief said, now for goodness sakes, don't bring this thing home full of holes. So we're flying over the Alps, and as far as you can see, 75 miles, as far as you can see, is nothing but snow. And so all of a sudden there's a little jolt, and I thought, uh-oh, this bomb fell out. Went through the bomb door, went through the bomb bay door, now it's falling. So I'm tracking it, and I see, oh my gosh, there's a little house down there. There's a house down there on the side. There's not a house within 50 miles. It's there in the house. Where's this bomb going to land? Well, it landed about a quarter of a mile from this house. And I'm sure if anybody was in it, they thought that we were trying to kill them, you know. So we got home, and the crew chief was aggravated because now he's got to work all night and take the damaged door off and get another door and put it on and be ready to go at 5 o'clock in the morning. So
That's my favorite story.
One more question.
So we have 12 more minutes before Mom's got dinner ready for us. What would you say, looking back on your time growing up, is sort of funny to you now? I'll give you an example of like what I mean. So I think about this funny little flip phone that I had when I was younger and how technology has progressed, and we have so much technology, and it's sort of funny looking back at the technology from when I was young. So over the course of your life, looking back, what's kind of funny to you knowing what you know now?
well, you have to understand first, the 30s were a time of depression for the country. Lots of people were out of work. And we had people in Birmingham that came to our front door and knocked and said, "We're hungry, can you give us anything to eat?" And my mother would say, "Go around and sit on the back steps and I'll bring you something to eat." So,
What kind of food would she give them?
whatever we had.
Which was what?
What would you all typically have?
Well, we ate a lot of chicken and we had vegetables. And we always had bread. My father could not eat without bread. So we either had rolls or cornbread. Or we had corn sticks or whatever. And gravy and mashed potatoes. And we just ate regular, and for salads, you know, we'd have pears, half a pear or half of some other kind of fruit on a plate on some lettuce. But we weren't poor. My dad had a good job. We lived in a neighborhood. Everybody was employed. And we didn't, I'm in grade school, and I don't think anything about segregation. That's just the way it was. And so I didn't see any black children. And they had, like I say, they had their own hospital, they had their own schools, and so we had a good grade school teachers and education. High school, I went to high school and had 2,000 students, and it was called Phillips High School. Now, I didn't really, we had 5 high schools in Birmingham. Birmingham at that time had 150,000 people. And so all these 5 high schools played each other in sports, all sports. And I was too small to make any teams because there was enough bigger boys that made the football and basketball and baseball and so forth. it was an era of different music.
Mhm.
We had, you know, Sarah, James, I can't think of his name. We had Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, and a lot of famous bands. And of course, that was our kind of music. And they had the jitterbug,
Jitterbug.
and I was not good at the jitterbug. And so I like slow dances. But we had a lot of dances in the South. And we had clubs that the boys and girls belonged to. And I don't remember now how we used to raise money, but we had dances twice a year in the spring and Christmas time. And the girls and the boys would alternate. We had a place there called a Pickwick Club in Birmingham where we all go to dance. And they had a band from Auburn, which is down in the southeastern corner of Alabama, Auburn College. They had a college band that sounded like Glenn Miller. You close your eyes, you couldn't tell the difference. So we would hire them to come. Our clubs would hire them to come to Birmingham and play our dances. We all wore, in the wintertime, we wore black tuxes, white shirts, black ties. The girls all wore long dresses, fancy dresses. And in the spring, we wore white coats, black pants, and the girls wore long dresses. We always bought our dates a corsage.
Oh.
Well, they had so many dances. Usually about 6 or 8 dances were no break.
Oh wow.
Now, see, everybody danced with everybody.
Mhm.
And I think it's strange here when you go to a dance with your date, you don't dance with anybody else. We dance with everybody. But you had no breaks, and it's about 4 no breaks with 4 surprises, which were the same as no break. So you'd ask this girl, can I have one of your dances? And she'd say, well, okay, you could have number 4 or whatever.
Mhm.
And so you could choose the girls that you wanted to have your low break dances with. They were generally slow dances. So you get to know the girls and all of them better from the different high schools. And so it was a lot of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. The only thing that one of these dances, I don't remember who the boy was. His father had a LaSalle. Well, you never heard of a LaSalle. A LaSalle, well, you look it up on the computer. It'll show you a picture of it. It was a beautiful sedan, and it was like Cadillac. So we had big white sidewall tires. So this boy said, my LaSalle will go 100 miles an hour.
Uh-oh.
We said, boy, it won't go. It won't go that fast. Yes, it will. No, it won't. We'll prove it. All right, come on.
Uh-oh.
So 4 of us leave the dance and go out, and we knew there was a hill there that had a long straight grade down. So we got there, and we got on there. I'm sitting in the back seat. I'm leaning on it, and here's the driver, and here's the other. I'm sitting here watching the odometer there, make sure how fast we got up to about 90, and I thought, and so it didn't make it to 100, but we got up to 85 or 90. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I've often thought, no seat belts. You know, we didn't know what a seat belt was. If that thing had had a blowout and turned over, it killed all of us. You know, that's the one of the craziest things that I did when I was a teenager.
Didn't you drive one of your friend's motorcycles to
Yeah,
Alabama?
one of my fraternity brothers named Charlie Crute, and his father had money, and Charlie had a Buick Century. It was a teardrop. See, it had 165 horsepower. Well, Charlie also had a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and he wanted both of them at school. He couldn't figure out how to get them. He got them to Birmingham, and so I said, well, he said, why don't you ride my motorcycle down from Birmingham down to Tuscaloosa, and I'll follow you in my car. And I said, okay. Well, I'd never been on a motorcycle before. So I got on that Harley and rode it 50 miles from Birmingham down to Tuscaloosa.
That's wild. That's hilarious. Didn't you all drive like in circles on the quad or something beside Denny Chives?
You got the bell tower there.
Yep.
Well, the great joy that we had was to get in a car and drive up there and do a 90-degree spin and come back out on the street.
I told people about that while I was at Alabama, while we were on the quad right there by the bell tower.
My sister was Chi Omega, and she was in school the same time I was. She was a year, 2 years ahead of me. And yeah, we were both there together. That was a nice short trip to Tuscaloosa. Yeah. It wasn't football season. Football season was over.
Well, thanks for doing the interview with us, Granddaddy.
Well,
This was fun.
I've enjoyed living, and have been so fortunate to have a Christian mother. My mother was born in Dawson Springs, Kentucky, and she was married in 1921. My father, when he got out of the Army in 1917, knew that he had to have a better education because he didn't want to be a coal miner. So he went west down to around Bowling Green, Kentucky, to go to a college and take a course in accounting. So that's where he met my mother. And so they were married. What I was going to tell you now about. Anyway, my mother's uncle was a Christian church minister, and he married them. Well, and all these coal camps, coal mining communities that I lived in as a child, we never went to church anywhere. And it was Depression time, and if there had been a church, the boss, my dad, was not allowed to associate with the workers. He was the boss.
Okay.
And he told everybody what to do. But as far as socializing in a church or anywhere else, you didn't do that. So we didn't have a Christian church until we got to Birmingham. And when we got to Birmingham, about 33, there was a Christian church there. And of course, my mother was delighted because that was the church that she grew up in. So she said, okay, let's all go to church. So we all went to church. And so my sisters and I, after we'd been there, I don't remember how long, I was probably 8 years old. The best I remember, I was about 8. She said, it's time for you children to be baptized. So we were all baptized on the same day. My father was baptized sometime after that, I think. And of course, that we belong to Christian church. In some places called Churches of Christ. And it's been an important part of our family life, church life. It's the truth about living and knowing our Creator and listening for reading His Word is one of the greatest benefits of red letter Bibles. Just think about being able to read the words of our Creator whenever you want to. And you open them up and it's just like He's sitting there talking to you. So it just makes all the difference to me and to my family because you all are Christians. And so it just couldn't be any better.
Well, we are certainly lucky to have you as our granddad. That's for sure.
Is that the end of our interview?
I believe
I
so.
think that's a wrap. So if you want, I'm gonna
Well,